Hey, Tyla.
Hi, Sally.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm really good.
I feel really silly because you're just in the next room.
Yes.
And yet we are not looking at each other face to face for this conversation.
Yeah, so for everyone listening, normally, as you know, Tyla and I record from completely different cities across the country from each other, but we're actually in Mexico right now on a little retreat, and are in the same house, and Tyla's in the bathroom of the bedroom that I'm in.
With a fort built out of blankets,
yes.
So we can try to get a good audio quality.
Because also we have the roar of the ocean and a really crazy windy day today. So there's a lot of trying to deliver the best sound quality and also make it extra fun for our editor.
Who we love you, Sarah.
Okay, so let's get to it. What is the best thing that's happened to you this week, Tyla?
Well, the best thing that has happened to me this week is just being in Mexico with my best friend. And all the time that we've just spent staring at the ocean and talking about nothing. It's been really amazing.
It's been really good.
What's the best thing that's happened to you this week, Sally?
I really enjoyed all of those things. I really liked our little adventure trying to find a restaurant that had been recommended to us and ending up, it's such a long story, but the thing that I really loved about it, the thing that made it the best thing that ever happened, or the best thing that happened this week, was then getting a take two and getting to find it a couple of days later and having a really delicious meal. That just made it even sweeter, I think, because of that first
briefly summarize take one was we were trying to follow Google Maps, and it was like, go down this street, and it looked like the street should like open up onto a boardwalk, but at the end of the street was like, it kind of got like dark and tiny, and there was a gate, and there were all of these men standing down there, and it didn't look like there was a way through, and we were just like, walking into this gated area with all of these foreign men does not seem like the smartest idea.
Not at all.
So we gave up.
I didn't like it, but I really liked the food once we did have it.
Yeah, we went back, round 2. We made it.
Yeah, in another direction, in case you're curious. Oh boy. So that's what's been happening this week, and now we have a guest again today for what happened a year ago today. Let's bring her on. Erica, welcome.
Hi, ladies.
Hi, Erica.
I wish I was in Mexico on the beach with you.
Oh, we wish you were here too. That would be really fun, because then we'd be in 3 separate rooms in this tiny house.
Well, thank you for having me.
We're so excited that you're here. I have a quick little anecdote that I would love to share before we get started, is that when Sally and I began this podcast, we were kind of like, what are some parameters for success? And one of my big things was that I was like, well, I hope that we get contacted by somebody that we don't really know very well who wants to come on and share their story with us. And then that happened like a week later, and it was you. And and I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Great. Well, I hope that I can share some things with your listeners that will help them in their own journeys.
So when Erica contacted us about coming on the show, it was a little bit different, because the thing that we want to talk about with Erica is not something that happened a year ago today. It's something that happened 10 years ago today. So, Erica, can you please share with us what it is we're going to be talking about?
Sure. So 10 years ago today, my life changed completely. I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area, and the morning started off like any other weekend morning. It was a Sunday. I received a phone call from my mother, who lived in Detroit, Michigan. And when I answered the phone, I knew immediately something was terribly wrong because my mother was crying. And my mother does not cry. I think in all my years, I've probably seen her cry just a few times. So I immediately was concerned and I said, Mama, what's wrong? And she said, Erica, we don't have Kyle anymore. And when she said that, it didn't compute with me. So I repeated, I said, well, what did you say? And she said, Erica, we don't have Kyle anymore. And it was as if somebody had come in and turned off the light in my life. So earlier that morning, my younger brother and only sibling, Kyle, had passed away in an automobile accident in North Carolina. And so my mother was calling to tell me that. And I think what immediately went through my mind is I was a couple of thousand miles away and I couldn't help her. And so, I immediately started contacting some of my family members who were closer to her so that they could just go and support and be there for her.
Mm-hmm. I know that feeling of being so far away when something bad happens.
Oh, yeah, it's very, very tough. So after I hung up the phone, I paused for a minute and I called my boyfriend at the time and I told him what had happened. He was a police officer in San Francisco, so he was at work. But he told me that his mom was going to come and sit with me until he could get to my house. And so she did, and his mom is an amazing woman who I love dearly. She came over, and it's so funny because, I had just received that news, but immediately I wanted to show her pictures of Kyle. I wanted her to see how amazing he was, how handsome he was, how beautiful his smile was. And in retrospect, I guess I was starting to just deal with the reality that he might be gone. And also the fact that she would never meet him. So that was really important to me. I also later on went outside, and this is something that sticks out in my mind. I remember that the sky was blue. Like, it was a beautiful day. Sky was blue. The grass just looked so green. All the colors were really vibrant. I remember the birds were chirping so loudly. And it was amazing to me because I felt like in that moment, my world was completely falling apart. But everything was so beautiful. And later on that evening, of course, talking to numerous family members and friends about what happened, at some point, someone suggested that I go just try to get some rest. So I went upstairs and, I lay down and somehow I guess I drifted off to sleep. And I woke up, or at least it felt like I woke up, and at the foot of my bed, there was Kyle. And he was just sitting there looking at me. And I looked back at him and he said, Erica, I'm okay. And then he was gone. And I think that's the only time that he's really come to me in that way. But it was huge for me because as a big sister, I had always felt that it was my responsibility to protect him. And so I felt like in that moment, he was trying to let me know that he really was okay. And I needed to hear that because I wasn't quite sure how I was going to keep going with things. But in that moment, I knew that eventually, even though it would take some time, I too would be okay.
Mm-hmm. There's so many different moments already that you've described that I'm curious to ask you about, but I think picking up right where you just left off with having felt like Kyle came to you with that message, if you could really take a minute and go back to that moment. Can you tell us in one word how you were feeling?
In one word, I would say that I was feeling hopeful. And I say that because I felt that I really felt like I was never going to smile again. I remember that. And I'm such a happy person. Anyone who knows me knows I'm always smiling. But my brother was my best friend. And I think when people pass away every day and, we lose loved ones, that's a part of life. I think what's special about a sibling is that you have, oftentimes, I know there are different situations, but you have a common origin. So there's this other person who knows where you come from. They've seen you during your highs and your lows. And a lot of times, even the siblings who don't always get along, they're always there for you. And it's like, I might be able to pick on you, but no one else better pick on you. That type of thing. My brother and I never had that kind of relationship. We always had a very loving relationship. So the reason that I say I was hopeful is in that moment, I felt like he had let me know he was okay, and that it would take some time, but I would get through it. And I think that's what I really took from it. The other thing that I took from it, I've always been a believer that when we leave here, our journey's not done. But I felt like my belief strengthened in that moment because I felt like he told me. Mm-hmm. So, and I'll share something else with you. We had a memorial service. My brother graduated from Duke University, and so
I went to Duke.
Did you?
Yeah.
Wow. He sure did. Okay. Great. Well, he graduated from Duke, and so we had a memorial service at Duke. And what's really interesting is we had several of his friends come and share their stories and their memories, and it was a wonderful event. One of his longtime friends, we all rode the school bus together. He stood up and he talked about Kyle, and I'll never forget it. He said that Kyle had come to him in a dream and said, "I'm okay." And I was supposed to speak after him. And I had to take a few minutes on that one. I couldn't believe it because I had not said anything to his friend about my dream.
Oh, so, I love Kyle. I love that Kyle is so, he really wanted everyone to know that he was okay.
Yes. And that's how, for me, it's very powerful because that's the kind of person he was anyway. So there's no surprise that happened.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you said that you haven't felt visited by him in the same way since then. Have you felt him with you in other ways?
Absolutely. So like in that particular instance, it was very clear. It was as if he was there with me. But over time, it has happened in other ways. I'll give you a really great story. So I obtained my MBA, and that's what actually brought me to Atlanta. I attended Emory University, and so remember one night I was working on some finance homework, and I'm in the computer room of my apartment complex, and this would have been in maybe 2008. So I'm going through the homework, and it's a tough problem set, and I really felt like I needed a hug in that moment. And this guy walks in, and he's talking on the phone, and he was really cute, by the way. So I wasn't trying to listen to his conversation, but I was sitting there, and he was talking about, I think they were talking about possibly doing a reality show with him in it. And so when he got off the phone, I said, I didn't mean to listen in on your conversation, but, it sounded pretty interesting. And so he told me that he had basically been a football star in college, and then he had been in an accident, and that threatened to ruin his career. And everything that he had held so dear, all the fanfare, all the accolades went away. His girlfriend, everything went away while he had to go through rehabilitation. And then he told me that he had worked really hard, and he was walking onto a pro football team. So I thought that was amazing. So
Wait, this is just a random guy in your apartment complex that you're having this conversation
with?
Yes. Okay, just wanted to make sure that I was clear on what's happening.
Who was very cute. And so he told me, so then I started telling him a little bit about my story. And he said, I said, yeah, I lost my brother a couple of years ago. And it's been really tough. And then I lost someone else who was very close to me the following year. And so I said, now I'm in school, and just kind of gave him, the rundown of everything that had gone on. And I'll never forget, he looked at me and he said, sometimes you go through things in life so that you can get to the top of the mountain, and you can turn around and look down and say, my God, look how far I've come. Mm. And I just remember that I feel like I had tears in my eyes. And he said, can I give you a hug? Mm. And I said, absolutely.
You can do more than that.
Right? Yeah. So he gives me this big bear hug. And then I said, well, it was very nice talking to you. Very nice meeting you. Best wishes to you. And he said, same to you. And so I got my things, and then I was on my way back to my apartment. And I remember stopping and saying, I need to go back and try to get his information so I can keep in touch with him or something. And I turned around to go back into the room, and he was gone. And I never saw him again. Wow. So that's an example, but it was, I just really believe that my brother said, this girl needs a hug. Right.
And some eye candy.
Exactly.
A little bit of inspiration. Oh. I love that story.
I feel like after we lose somebody, you said you felt like you would never smile again, and I've definitely had the experience of losing someone and feeling like I would never start living a normal day-to-day life ever again. I'm wondering, do you have any idea how long it took before you started feeling like yourself again after Kyle died?
Wow. That's a good question. I will say it's tough. And the reason that it's tough is because when you lose someone very close to you, and then you have to deal with not only your grief, but your family members' grief, it can be very hard. And I knew that everyone was hurting. And for me, it was very tough because I wasn't in Detroit, where most of my family is. Mm-hmm. So But, I knew if I could just try to stay strong for my mother, that would help her. Because my mother is an amazing woman. She has always sacrificed so much so that Kyle and I could have the best opportunities. So I knew that, part of her was just gone. And I think, that's very tough. So for me, I think I had to try to start, figuring out ways to cope as best as possible so that I could try to be strong for other people in my family. I think that's what I turned to, because I'm the kind of person who wants everybody to be okay. Mm-hmm. And in this particular situation, this was something that I could not fix. As much as I wanted to, I couldn't fix it. Mm-hmm. So then I guess the other thing is, I have a very strong support system. I'm very blessed in that way, through my friends. And so that was very helpful. And then, like I said, in 2008, I was in school. So I think I tried to turn my attention to that. And being a full-time MBA student, you stay very busy. So I think that also helped me a lot. But I talk to my friends quite a bit, and many of my family members. And talking definitely helps. You can't keep things bottled inside.
Well, that's interesting, because my next question was, I think that sometimes when we're trying to be strong for other people, or when we have things like being in an MBA program that take up so much time and energy, at least I know that for me, sometimes those things are a way for me to really avoid feeling my feelings. Do you feel like that was happening, that you were kind of avoiding really feeling the loss?
I think you're absolutely right in that can happen. So one thing that I tell people who have experienced a loss, especially a recent loss, and because you're exactly right, Tyler, and I had to learn this, but it's allow yourself to feel how you feel. So if you want to cry, then cry. If, you feel frustrated, then feel frustrated. Because you're absolutely right. That is something that can happen. You can repress, all of those feelings, and then it could just kind of push you to your limits, and you don't want to do that, So I will say that, especially earlier on, I went through those days where I would just think about something that Kyle said, and I might be laughing one minute and crying the next. Going to his friends' weddings, or somebody had a baby, while I was ecstatic for that individual, it was also really hard because I'm thinking to myself, Kyle should be here. And I think those moments were tough as well. But, I think that it's on the flip side, it's also important to understand that you are still here, and you have to find that new normal, and then you have to keep living, because your loved one, at the end of the day, that's what they will want for you.
So it sounds then that you really were grounded even then. Is that true, or is it just kind of 10 years removed, looking back, you can say that now? How were you kind of managing that at the time?
Right. Well, at the time, I will be completely honest, I was heartbroken. I couldn't believe that someone so good could be taken so soon. He was 25, almost 26 years old. And I felt like he was always so good to other people. How could his life be cut short? And like I said, I am a person of faith, but in those moments, in those days right after this happened, I felt like my faith was tested. And then, like my mother is a very strong woman, and she's also a woman of faith, and we talked a lot and we supported each other, and I think that really helped me. But definitely, 10 years later, I can look back on the situation and say, and that's part of my journey, that, I think if anything, I've grown significantly. I've grown in my faith, because different things have happened subsequently, that have made me believe that, my brother, he's gone from here physically, but he's still with me. Like, I know in my heart, he's still here. So, that helps me to kind of move on and live my life completely, fully.
I have a question I want to ask, but I feel a little nervous to ask it.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Do you talk to Kyle?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny. So Kyle was always my little buddy. He was 3 years younger than me, and he was just the cutest little baby. So I think when he got here, my mom used to say, that's Erica's baby. I just loved him. I looked out for him. We looked out for each other. And so it's funny. I never imagined that I would be living my life without him. I'll tell you a story. When I was 16 years old, I remember I had my first heartbreak, and I was leaving a dance, and I had broken up with my boyfriend, my very first boyfriend. I got in the car, and I was crying, and Kyle saw me crying. He tried so hard to cheer me up. And I remember thinking to myself, then as a 16-year-old girl, boy, these guys are going to come in and out of my life, I'm sure, but Kyle's always going to be there. And it's, so crazy to me that he wasn't physically, but I still feel like he is spiritually. And there are definitely times when I'm kind of going through something, or I might, have to think through something, and I will talk to him, and I'll say, man, Kyle, what should I do? Especially if it's something maybe having to do with family or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do. And it's like I still feel connected to him. And now I have a nonprofit organization that I started, in part in memory of him. And so that's just another way that I feel, still very connected to him and what his life meant. So
it's so beautiful. I think that it takes a lot of strength to... I'm crying over here, just to be very clear. I think it takes a lot of strength to continue to engage in the relationships with people who aren't physically here anymore. Yeah. I've lost some people And it's been coming up recently that I want to engage more in those relationships, but I haven't up until this point. And I think that it just takes a lot of strength to know that even when someone's gone, they're not necessarily really gone.
Right.
And that you can still talk to them and that they are still here for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's funny, Tyler, you know, I'm talking to you 10 years from, you know, what I kind of call my ground zero.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how that moment comes to define your whole life in a way?
Oh, like, yes.
Before this and after this.
Exactly. Because honestly, I'm a very different person now than I was then. I'll tell you how. I used to be pretty like just happy-go-lucky and just kind of moving through life. And I had a plan, you know, I wanted to go to school, graduate, work 4 years, and then wanted to go back to school to get my master's degree. Now, I didn't go back to school right, you know, during that time frame. It took me a little bit longer to go back, but I went back as planned. When this happened, I realized that there were just some things that I had no control over. And I think when you realize that and you start to accept it, you see life differently. So after this happened, you know, I also saw somebody who was here today, gone the next day. And that really, you know, made me realize how precious life is. Because it's not like he was sick or anything or going through something like that. He was just here one day, gone the next. So for me now, I really value time. I value relationships that I have. And so I think, you know, those are some of the things and some of the ways in which I've changed over this journey that I've been on.
I keep wanting to go back to, I guess maybe just in the year or two after his passing. Mm-hmm. I would just love to hear a bit more about how you were experiencing that time. Obviously, you made a decision to go back to school during that time. So, you know, life kept going for you. So maybe even by maybe using that as an example of kind of how you were moving through life at that time, I would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure. Well, it's interesting. So I remember kind of the first few months afterwards. You know, you go through the funeral, you go through kind of taking care of business when somebody passes away. You have immediately following all of that, you have people who are checking on you and, you know, obviously they're concerned about you and you're sharing stories and you're sharing memories, that type of a thing. But then, you know, slowly all of that comes to an end. And then you're sitting there just kind of within your own thoughts.
Oh my God. I'm like crying so hard.
Oh, well, and so I remember honestly thinking, okay, I had to really think about who I was. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I was still at that point somebody's daughter. I was somebody's granddaughter, somebody's cousin, somebody's friend. But the only person that, you know, I was big sister to wasn't there anymore. And I wasn't an only child because I had a sibling for almost 26 years. So it's interesting. And then gradually over time, I said, no, my brother's still my brother. He's just not with me physically anymore, but I'm still his big sister. You know, I'm still going to take up for him, or, you know, all the things that I've always done. I'm still going to be proud of him. But like in the months afterwards, immediately afterwards, those were some thoughts that came to my mind. The other thing is, I remember looking at siblings, like especially kids. I would be at the grocery store and you would see siblings just kind of bickering. Or I have cousins who are my first cousins, but they're a lot younger than me, and they're boys, so some similar situation. And I always tell them, you guys be good to your brothers, love your brothers, because that relationship is important. Like, you're supposed to stick up for each other, and I guess the point is, value that relationship, because you just never know when that person's going to be gone. So I think those are some of the things that I thought about, probably more so within those first, couple of years.
It makes me think about the memory that you shared in the car when you were 16, and having that thought, like, I will always have this. And then when you don't have it anymore, it kind of makes you want to run around like a crazy person, like at those kids in the supermarket being like, you may not always have this. Like,
exactly.
It's so true. Important. I know that after my dad died, I really wanted to tell everybody, like, you may not always have, well, most of us won't always have this, but
yes,
you just never know.
Yep. No, I'm sorry about your father. That's tough. It's tough. But, I will say your dad is still with you.
Yeah, I definitely know that. He makes it known.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting because it does change the way that you move through the world.
Yes. It sure does. It really does. And yeah, I mean, I remember the moment when I realized, it really hit me that he wasn't going to be there anymore. So I remember going home that first Christmas, after he passed away, and we always would have family dinners. It just wasn't the same. I honestly don't think it's been the same since.
Well, how could it be?
Exactly. You always feel like that piece is missing. But yeah, and then we used to have kind of like a little ritual when we would go home, because I was in California and he was in North Carolina. So when we would basically meet up at Christmas, and then my mom would pick me up from the airport, then him up from the airport, or vice versa. And then we would, of course, spend time with the family, but we will always make sure that we would do something together, whether it be, going to the movies or just hanging out. And, it's just that first Christmas afterwards, there was none of that. So all of those things were experiences that I just had to go through, and my family members had to go through, his friends had to go through it. But I guess, that's part of life, and what happens when somebody you care about passes on.
Besides the nonprofit, are there any other ways that kind of stand out that you've really loved honoring your brother?
Well, I guess the first thing that happened was immediately after he passed away, and this was a huge honor, a scholarship fund in his name was established at our school, which is a K through 12 school. And so, Inspired by Thee, which is the nonprofit, it evolved, but basically as a result of that scholarship being formed. And I would say, I believe we've so far given out approximately $26,000 in scholarship monies from the scholarship in his name at the school. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge honor.
Yeah, that's amazing.
In itself. Yeah, it's very exciting. So of course, I want to do everything I can to keep that going. But and then, like I said, we had the officials, the service at Duke, which was really nice.
Was it in the chapel?
It was, yeah.
Oh
it was absolutely beautiful.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I will say also, I've had an opportunity to go to, as I mentioned before, a couple of his friends, their weddings. And I'll tell you, just sitting there at the reception and talking to some of the parents of some of the kids that he went to school with, talk to me about Kyle. So it's funny. It's like always those stories that, just in unexpected places or unexpected times, people will come to me and they'll say, I knew your brother. I remember your brother. He did this, he made me smile. He made me laugh. And those are the things that really just warm your heart and keep you going.
Yeah. I think that sometimes those people that share those things with you don't realize what a huge gift they're giving you.
Yes. Oh, it's everything.
Yeah. And it's just like everything. Something you would have never known, or a side of the person that you've lost that you might have never seen or never heard about. And it's so fun.
Absolutely.
I feel like that's advice that I hang on. Sorry. I want to think how to say this. I feel like whenever I know someone who's experienced a loss, even someone who knows someone who's experienced a loss, that's always what I want to tell them to do. It's like, share a story about what that person meant to you with the people that were close to that person.
Yes. Absolutely. Or something I know that helped us immediately afterwards, especially, is, but really anytime, is to receive cards. Of course you get a lot of cards, but the people who wrote stories or memories in their cards, because you can go back and read those, over and over again, and they really do help.
So I would love to know a little bit about how the idea came to honor your brother. You said that it was like partially inspired by him, but through this nonprofit, because as somebody who used to work in nonprofits for a long time, things like that always kind of light me up, hearing sort of the why, not just the mission, but the story behind nonprofits. To me is always, maybe I'm a nerd. But given how this certainly has a really special connection, I'd love to hear just a bit about that too.
Sure. So the name of the nonprofit is called Inspired by Thee. And so, inspired by you, basically, just a different way of saying you. And as I mentioned, initially we do have a scholarship in his name at University Liggett School, which is the school that I went to grades 3 through 12, and Kyle went first grade through 12th grade. So spent a lot of time there. And it's a very close-knit community. So that's where things started. I came up with this Inspired by the idea because I wanted to start a blog, and the blog was going to be about people, places, and things that inspire me. And so when I started thinking about the first blog post, I thought, wow, well, Kyle, inspires me to get up out of the bed every day and go to work and do my thing. So I want to make this first blog post about him. And then just some things happened where we wanted to ultimately create a larger platform for the scholarship that was already in his name. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to figure out a way to try to help more people and maybe broaden the scope. And so we started talking about the idea of actually establishing a nonprofit where we could give out multiple scholarships and we could still continue to support the scholarship in his name at University Liggett School. Mm. So that's how it evolved. And then we decided that there would be merit-based scholarships, and we would have one scholarship in particular that would honor young people, high school and college students who were thriving and succeeding despite either losing a sibling or a young parent and just dealing with, some of life's largest obstacles. So that's what Inspired by Thee is all about. And that's basically our mission. But
are they college scholarships?
So it will be high school and college.
Okay.
Yeah, so graduating seniors for the most part, or it could be someone attending a private school, I guess, but they'll just be merit-based scholarships. Mm-hmm. And of course, kids who are in college.
So, how long ago was the nonprofit established?
It became a 501c3 in November of last year. So really last year mm-hmm. is when we kind of kicked things off. I could tell you a story. So our first event as Inspired by Thee, we decided to go to Cedar Point Amusement Park in Sandusky, Ohio. And for me, this was really symbolic for a number of reasons. First and foremost, Kyle and I loved Cedar Point. That was one of the last trips that we went together. Mm. So that was special in itself.
Had you been back since then?
No, I had not been back since Kyle and I went, prior to us going last year, primarily because I was living in California, that was so far away. And then, moving to Atlanta, it's still not very close. So that's really the only reason, because I absolutely love roller coasters and I love that amusement park. But, no, so that was really something that I felt compelled to do. And I got that question from a lot of people as to, all the different fundraisers you could do. Why was this one so important? This particular one. And I said, no, I just have to do it. And the other reason is I thought it was so symbolic, because when you, and Tyler, I know you can relate to this, but when you lose someone, you really do go on a roller coaster ride of emotions and this journey. And I felt like I had really experienced all of that. And there was a roller coaster called the Millennium Force that I was really scared to get on. And I just decided that this was going to be the trip. I was going to do it. And I'll tell you, when we got to the park, I was with some amazing individuals. Some traveled very far to be with me on that day to launch Inspired by Thee. And the first thing that they wanted to do was to go on Millennium Force. And I'm thinking to myself, can't we build up to that?
Oh, boy. Well, I feel like that's how we feel about life, right? Like, can't we build up to that big, scary thing?
That's true. That's true. That's absolutely true. And you're absolutely right. So I think so they were like, no, let's go. That's the first one we're doing. And I said, okay. So we went on that first hill. We were climbing the first hill, and I'll tell you, we got to the top of the hill, and I just looked around. I think it's 300 feet high in the sky. And when I went down, I just breathed. I exhaled, and it really felt so good. It was such an awesome experience. So I think it was the perfect way to kind of kick off what I hope is an opportunity for us to really touch a lot of people's lives and do some amazing things.
Yeah. I think
love
it's
that.
amazing that there's a scholarship specifically for someone who may have lost a sibling or had a similar loss,
Yes.
because it really takes a lot to keep moving.
Yes.
And I can imagine that losing someone at such a crucial point in your life as like the transition from high school to college could really derail someone. So to have that kind of support is really pretty incredible.
Yes. And I've have friends who've lost young parents while in high school, and I know, they had to be the primary care, well, at least a caregiver in some of those situations. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it has to be extremely tough. So our goal is definitely to provide the support system for those young people.
I feel like Kyle would be so proud.
Yeah.
I hope so. I think he's smiling up there. I really do. I really do. I can see it, and I'm smiling right now. It makes me smile. So, it definitely makes, life a lot more fun. Being able to do this. I feel like Inspired by Thee, honestly, was something that was given to me. I was inspired to do this as a result of this journey I've been on for 10 years. And I think that's why I'm so excited about it. So, yeah, I think he would be happy.
Yeah, especially after that roller coaster ride you had. I'm sure he was really, he was really pumped about that.
Exactly, yeah. He's like, that's what, when we got off the ride, we said, we did it for Kyle, so absolutely.
So this year marks 10 years, and how does that feel?
Wow. This day is never really an easy day for me, but number one, I'm excited to be here talking to the two of you. And hopefully by my sharing my story today, I might be able to give a little bit of hope for someone maybe who has recently lost someone. And I guess if you take anything from what, I've shared, it's that, number one, you will smile again. It might not seem like it immediately, but you will. And, those tears will turn into smiles, and you'll remember things that, that person said, or stories or memories that the two of you shared, and, you'll laugh more than you cry. So I would say that.
Can you believe that it was 10 years ago?
It's interesting. It's funny because I remember everything about this day 10 years ago. And so when I think about it in that regard, it seems like yesterday. But when I think about the journey as a whole and just kind of the highs and lows, then I know that there has been some healing that has taken place. It's funny, people say time heals all things, and I disagree with that. I think, and other people have actually said this to me, but time doesn't necessarily heal everything. It makes dealing with the pain a little bit easier to bear. And I believe that that's more accurate, or at least it's been for me. But it's definitely been a journey, and I think sometimes even when things seem to be really just you can't believe that some things are happening. I always say, try to find some value in the valley. And I think that's what I've tried to do over this time.
Yeah, I like what you say about time doesn't necessarily heal all things, because I do think that healing is a choice also. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's the same as what was it? Find something in the valley, value in the valley?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Find the value in while you're going through that valley, you know. Because like my mom always says, where there's life, there's hope. So, you know, sometimes you hear people who get so consumed in their grief that they stop living, you know, and I just think that's so sad. When I talk to some of my friends who've experienced loss, I just, you know, remind them that every day that you open your eyes, you have an opportunity to just make a positive difference, you know, even if it's just sharing your story in a way that might touch somebody else's life. Mm-hmm. You know, that might be a way for you to heal. But I think at the end of the day, it's just important not to be consumed with your grief and stop living, you know, because time is precious. I feel like when you lose somebody, at the very least, what I learned was time is truly precious and valuable. So we really need to make the most of our time here.
This is such gorgeous reflection, and I thank you so much for sharing today with us. I think that's all that I keep thinking and feeling. This entire time that we've been talking, it's just like, you know, what a big day for you, and what an honor it is to share it with you for as briefly as we can.
To share it with you and with Kyle.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you both. You know, thank you for just, I don't know, being open to sharing this day with me. So
it is my pleasure.
I'm still the proud big sister. I can't help it. So
love that.
And I really feel that from you too. Yeah. I want you to know that. Like I mean, we've only spoken for an hour, but I feel like I know who Kyle was in the world just based on who you are in the world. And that is really, that's really something to witness.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
So now comes the question, if you could sum up in one word how you're feeling today, what would it be?
Wow. If I could sum it up in one word, I would say blessed. Really. And I feel blessed because for several reasons. I always, when I think about this day and I think about my brother's life, I always say, you know, there were so many houses that God could have dropped him off at, but he dropped him off at my house. And I believe that I'm so fortunate to have shared that time that I shared with him when he was physically here with me. But, you know, as we've talked about throughout this conversation, he's still with me. He's in my heart now. And so I'm fortunate that relationship continues. I'm also blessed and fortunate that I have a great support system of family and friends who are helping me kind of, continue on with this journey I've been on and take things to that next level through this organization Inspired by Thee that I'm trying to build. Because as I mentioned, I really believe that was given to me. And that's because of my faith, which I also shared, I feel has been strengthened through this whole journey. So if I had to sum up everything, it is that I am blessed.
And boy. Sorry, I feel blessed too. Okay, sorry, continue, Sally.
Okay. If you could go back to 10 years ago today, knowing what you know now, what would you say to yourself?
I would say, wow. I think the biggest thing I would tell myself is, Erica, you don't see it now. You can't possibly see it now, but it's going to be okay. That's it, because 10 years ago today, I did not feel that way. I really didn't. But it's just amazing. It's really been a journey, and I haven't gone through it alone. I know my mom, she's been on her own journey, and like I said, my family members and other friends, Kyle, he had lots of friends, so I know they've been on their journeys and they miss him just as much as I do, but it's very clear to me now, it's okay. It's okay.
Oh, I just want to go back to 10 years ago today and give you the biggest hug.
Thank you. And I would have gladly accepted that hug, I'll tell you. But I feel like, you ladies are giving me a hug right now. I appreciate it. It was just the opportunity to talk to you. I get a lot of joy out of sharing my story, because I think hopefully it provides, some sense of hope when you're going through some things, just kind of, if you're going through something, keep going, because eventually, there's going to be an upside, and you might not be able to see it in that moment, but that it will come. So yeah. Thank you as well.
Oh, yay. Okay, so Erica, if anybody would like to learn more about your nonprofit or find you online, where would they do that?
Sure. So our website is www.inspiredbythee.com. And we're also on Facebook. And our website we're in the process of finishing it up, so it will be launching soon. So stay tuned.
It'll be up before you know it. And we'll put a link to Erica's website in the episode description, so you can go check it out and make a donation if you feel so called.
That would be great.
Sally, where can the people find you on the internet?
People can find me at Sally Simply on pretty much all social media, and they can also find me at sallymercedes.com or at unmutedexpression.com. What about you, Tyla?
I'm at TylaFowler.com and Tyla M. Fowler on all of the social media.
Yay! And you can also find Zena Howell on social media at ZYNAHEL. She provides our intro and outro music. We'd love for you to support her. I'm obsessed with her music. And I just want to thank you again, Erica, and all of our listeners. I feel so connected right now to like everyone on earth.
I know. I just imagine us giving everybody that's listening a huge, huge hug.
Yeah. There's so much love for everyone. And if you enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you to share it with some people that you love. I mean, I was crying and smiling throughout the entire episode. Yeah. So
I was just like sniffling over here. Share it. We'd love if you would give us a rating and a review on iTunes if you're enjoying what you hear. And we will talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.